Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is 5/11, 5/11/2012, Friday night. And without further ado, I'm going to go to a champion. I'm going to go to a man who was one of the highest decorated Kansas State troopers ever, of all time. I'll go to a guy who also was trained in the most esoteric fighting arts and who was off the radar screen himself for a number of years and probably knows a little bit more about super soldier than most folks. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the man who also has done his doggonedest to get you trained and proofed up, and my friend, Greg Evenson. Are you with me tonight, Brother Greg?
Hawk, I am, and as always, and I tell you this with a sincere heart, you know this, we are friends on and off the air. I appreciate being with you. Important program tonight.
Yes, sir. And I'll tell you what I think we ought to look at, we've all been talking about what's going on. I think the key to this thing is Greg, we're seeing this almost as if, just like it was in the days of the Nazis or of the right at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. People are watching these events and they just can't believe they're happening. But then they keep asking me, and they ask you, or they ask Steve Quayle, and they say, well, when's this stuff really going to happen? It's happening before our eyes right now, is it not?
It is, Hawk, indeed. And really, the operation began several years ago. This is the softening up. This is the get ready, get set, go, the three benchmarks of the Watchman. We've been telling people when the dust trail was way off and we just got our first glimpse of what was happening. Many of us, including you and Steve, been faithful about doing that. Now we see the actual movement of the troops and horses from the old days, figuratively speaking, of course, and soon to be, very soon to be at the gates. I don't know how much more we can say or do, Hawk, but I'm going to continue this. I know you are and Steve is, until we just can't do it anymore. But there are elements that are coming out of this softening up, this time when we see incrementally, we see the things happening that we've been talking about, and now they're coming to fruition, along with many other things that just absolutely to the person who has eyes to see and ears to hear, it's happening around us right now in our country, in our state, in our communities, and there are many in denial so abject that if it were any other situation, they would be due for some serious counseling or being put in an institution for being unable to deal with reality. That's how serious this is and how far people have gone to drop the ball.
Yeah. Now, Greg, I'll tell you, this stuff, it just does not quit. Every day there's 15, 20, 30 more stories. And then in this country and then in other countries as well. And the economic collapse that they're obviously planning. Also the war, it looks like we're getting ready to see the fulfillment of Isaiah 17, the burden of Damascus, which I mentioned a little bit last night, where there's that one part there in Isaiah 17 where it says the nations of the world are, well, let me just get to it real quick because it's sitting right there, and it says, and the nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. So all these thousands of U.S., NATO, and all the Arab troops from the different countries, special forces who are trying to get the Syrian thing going, it looks like the Russians and the Syrians will use nuclear weapons because that's the chaff that I think the Lord is talking about. But that's just one of many items. And then you got Iran. So who knows what's going to kick this thing off? What are you hearing, brother, as far as the current events go?
10 o'clock this morning, Hawk, I got a call from an upper echelon officer, now retired, just retired, who said to me, look, this has been forming for the last 2 or 3 years, but it really has been coming into play the last year or so. Now, we know that there are troops in this country because we see them. We hear them. We visually see their operations and where they are grouping at various institutions, military bases around the country. But what I did not know, and I'll tell you the way he told me, It is called International Occupation Command, IOC. It has a mission. The mission is to lock down this country in the event of civil war or an outbreak of hostilities or in the aftermath of a false flag or true terrorist event. But it's really the numbers indicate that they are preparing to go against the American people. If you don't think that that isn't in their forward planning, then again, turn the show off, Hawk, because they're not going to get it. It's happening. That is one element that came today. The second is that apparently this has been given a mission name, and I don't know if you've heard it. I had not, but it is being termed Operation Mountain Lion. The reason for it is it's being described like this. The operation will jump in either from the airborne assets, most likely, or on the ground. They will pin down and destroy. They will control and destroy any objective they are sent in to take out. Operation Mountain Lion. A mountain lion jumps, pins down, and destroys its prey. Thus, the name that I've been given. The areas that it will cover will be Fort Riley in the Midwest, Fort Bragg north and along the East Coast, Fort Benning and south along the southeastern coast, Fort Lewis in Washington along the west coast, and Fort Hood down in Texas for the deep south. Those are the 5 that were identified to me today, along with the CID units. Now, for many law enforcement officers who are listening tonight, you would recognize that as Criminal Investigation Division of whatever, state police, sheriff's office, federal agencies, whatever. However, this CID unit stands for the acronym stands for Capture, Interrogate, and Detain or Destroy. They did not tell me for sure which one that is. Destroy the objective, but detain individuals. Now, if you put all this together with what just happened this week with the Commander-in-Chief's decision to prohibit, through executive order, I believe it was executive order, to prohibit the importation of 1 million M1 Garands and M1 carbines that had been in Korea since the time of the Korean War, what you have, as General George Patton said, the finest battle rifle ever conceived was the M1 Garand, 30-06, a full-length weapon that was deadly to the enemy, mastered by hundreds of thousands of our soldiers, and went probably a good way in winning World War II in Europe as a weapon, a personal weapon. And the carbines, of course, a little lighter weight, a little shorter distance, but they were easy to handle, easy to move in combat. But 1 million of them that have been sitting in storage in Korea for 60 years are now prohibited from being brought into this country. They're American-made, the finest engineered weapons in the history of fighting in this country, and they are no longer able to be brought in here because I believe that in conjunction with what I've just said and the readiness that is being put to the test in NORTHCOM and this International Occupational Command, including the Spetsnaz troops and North European troops who are familiar with terrain and weather in the United States, especially the northern half of the country, you have the making, Hawk, of a situation that just puts more icing on the cake. The cake has been built. We got 7 layers of icing. This is one more. What does that mean? Does it mean that the government is really so fearful of the American people and the collection or the purchasing of these fine weapons that they're afraid that if they got into the hands of capable Americans, that if the American people were ever attacked or their backs pushed into a corner, that they're against the wall now, but if it ever came down to fighting, Hawk, they don't want 1 million M1 Garands and carbines back in this country. I'm telling you right now, it has nothing to do with the bull crap that Obama put out about how this could potentially be misused. Swimming pools are potentially misused. Skateboards are misused. but a weapon like this.
And that's also crazy, particularly when the government's run all the guns to the Mexican cartels. They rent them to Chapo Guzman because he'll pay them the cut from their dope. He'll pay the U.S. government and the CIA their cut, Greg. So we got to run guns to him. But heaven forbid if a civilian, rifle program could get some nice, inexpensive target practice weapons, like some M1s to come in,
Well, that's exactly right. But it does just underscore, Hawk, one more time, that all of this is subterfuge, all of it is lie, all of it is positioning, all of it is getting ready for what they've been training for in this country, both at the state, that is police, and military level for the last several years. It is at absolute fever pitch. They know what's coming, and they're getting prepared for it while they try to disarm, and indeed will disarm, as the Georgia State Patrol and other states were involved just a couple of years ago in these door-to-door attempts to take weapons, and anyone that resisted was to be dealt with harshly right on the spot, and I mean with the use of lethal force. They were trained this way. So, American people, we say to you again, the time is late. It is so late that I'm not sure that you can make up for lost ground, but please don't hesitate. Do what you were doing. Get your plans together. That's part of what I do, and I'm available to you. Write to me or get hold of me. We're holding a camp here very soon in June just for that purpose, not to wage war, but to defend yourselves, so you know how to make it out there on your own. If we don't do this, Hawk, if we don't take this stuff seriously, and we look at the Octagon Command, if we don't understand what they're setting up as their command and control structure underneath this country as well as above, then we will be swept over coast to coast like a tsunami.
Yes, and all these fools out here saying, well, what could 150,000 or 100,000 Spetsnaz troops do? Just like you said, they could jump in and take over an entire city or state,
Well, Hawk, you're looking at 6 or 7 divisions.
Yeah.
Of special forces, Russian special forces. We're not talking about a couple of companies. We're talking about upwards of division command. That is basically a corps. So I don't know what more can be said. That's just those that we know of most recently, 150,000. There are at least 2 to 3 times that number that have been in the country for the last 5 to 7 years. That have been
Dutch, the Belgians, the Danes, the Swedes. You got all these guys, the Singapore Air Force, the all kind of people from all different types. East Bloc troops, Germans by the score. Man, the Germans I've been seeing. It's just incredible.
And so what's the purpose of that? Why would they be here training in those kind of numbers? Why would they be here training really at all? There's places all over the world they can train. They can train in their own nations. They can train against scenarios that put them in geographical locations that would make it tough to fight, but they could at least be acclimated to it by virtue of study and training, and we did that. We've done that in 2 world wars. Men had never gone over and fought in France and Germany. They haven't fought in Japan and China, but they fought with battle tactics that would get them through at a time and a place that was required. It didn't matter that you had to be there to practice the training. That's ridiculous. That's right. It is just a way of saying to the American people, gee whiz, we're doing our friendly thing internationally, of course. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Excuse me. It is a big deal. It's becoming a larger deal every day, and there will soon be enough forces in this country not only to control basically the American people, but those forces, military and police, that would say, no, we're not going to do this. We're backing off. We're checking out of this game. We're going to go with the good guys. That is the American people, the people trying to defend their own land, and so they're going to have enough and enough sophisticated weaponry on the ground, weapon system, defensive and offensive, that they can deal with any loss of troops. Either civilian or military, that is police forces, and it's part of the great plan, Hawk. It's not just something they talk about. It's not something they'll just deal with. They'll reflexively handle. They have trained and are prepared air assets, land assets, and in some cases on the coast, naval assets to deal with this whole thing should there be an uprising.
Yes, they are, and I'll tell you something. And if they ain't got enough troops, all they got to do is send a few Anatovs to pick up some red Chinese paratroopers, if they want them, I believe that the Costco could send enough boats, that's the Chinese Overseas Shipping Company, could put enough container ships filled up instead of with illegal red Chinese workers. They could fill them up with red Chinese troops pretty easily. And then, of course, they do have the red Chinese have all the Long Beach port available for them. And so it's just wonderful. Now, Greg, going back to the term the Octagon, I've talked about that, and we've talked about it as the 8th command, the end time kind of command. Tell us more about what you know about that, and then also perhaps the sense of evilness of it.
Well, not only, Hawk, did the great planners for the end of the world, the end of time, cataclysms beyond anything we can imagine, tectonic plate shifting, all-out nuclear war, asteroid or other issues from space, whatever it is, the United States committed at least 20 years ago that I'm aware of. It may be longer than that. Steve might have a better time frame about that, but I'm aware of 20 years, that the underground building of retreats, bunkers, deep transportation lines at high speed, and all of that have been going on for years as technology developed and they upgraded below ground. What was the point of investing above ground any more facilities, knowing that most likely those facilities would be destroyed on a first strike or on some unknown targeted asteroid hit? And I don't mean someone targeted, but wherever it lands.
Or invasion from
sure,
space.
And the forces from space that come out there. It's real easy with NASA being under the Pentagon to always have told their pilots and command module commanders that anything you see out there you don't report. Then my good friend Clark McClellan, who worked at NASA for over 30 years, and is aware of what's going on in space and has made it part of his life's mission now as he gets toward the end of his life to try and bring this out. Look, there is no doubt in my mind that there are forces at play in space that just do simply, all they do is they're just going to complicate everything that we see and that we're a part of in the next, the short-term future. But going back to the underground, they had to mimic what was already done above ground, but they expanded it a little bit and gave command to this. As we know, we have a Pentagon in Washington that is the home, the seat, as President Eisenhower said, of the great military-industrial complex. If he stated that much, and it's been acknowledged over the last 60 years that this is in fact a great institution of tyranny in this country, then why would it be so unusual or so unbelievable that they would have reestablished the Octagon Command, that is an 8-sided, 8 elements to this command, including, of course, the service branches, the police and intelligence branches, economy and banking. Hawk, it has control of everything in our society, everything that we deal with. And of course, when you reduce it down to general headings that just deal with this, we're talking about an issue that for banking, for instance, it would of course be all the Federal Reserve, the institutions of the banks themselves, the types of lending that they're going to control it all. Cashless society, into the chip.
Bank holidays, everything
correct.
In your safe deposit box belongs to the government. Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
We'll have fun trying to get into it as soon as they sign the order. It's in there. I've had high-level banking people from New York City who called me from one of the several survival expos around the country saying, look, we used to make fun of you guys. We'd listen to you and say, yeah, sure. And then he said, all of a sudden, we started to see things happening memos coming through, policies coming through, changes in what we were supposed to say and not say, and how we were supposed to set up accounts and not do it, and how we could liquidate some of these accounts on virtually a hair trigger action. And so he said, we're the ones. We grouped up 5 of my buddies on the upper echelon at this one bank. He said, we bought our retreat. We've got everything planned. And he said, we're listening to you guys. Well, let's just assume for the sake of the debate tonight, Hawk, that what we're saying is accurate and that it is out there, it is in the works, and it's ready to be put into play as soon as the situation, whatever that might be, would call for it. Now, some would say, and I see the wisdom in what they say, saying, well, we must be prepared in case anything would happen. We want things to be somewhat normal if that's possible. Well, it's not possible, especially if you have the kinds of possibilities that we're talking about tonight occur. But let's just say that, all right, we're going to plan and we're going to get the structure set in place and we're going to be all set to go. Well, I have to tell you, if the surface of the United States has been greatly altered or destroyed by whatever event, why is it necessary to maintain and control the Internal Revenue Service as a backup plan to make sure that we collect taxes from the American people when things go down? This is over the edge of the page, Hawk. It doesn't make any sense, but yet they're the kind of people that will plan that way so they truly wrap those chains around our wrists. We will be enslaved. We're enslaved now. We're enslaved in our ignorance.
You better believe it.
We're enslaved in ignorance. We're enslaved in spiritual loss. People would rather go to a soccer game tonight and go out and eat a pizza and not even bring any of this up, not anything specific about what we're talking about, but just the idea as a whole. Do you have anything set back in case there's a little problem with the weather or there's some other problem? No, they don't. They don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They stick their heads in the ground or in their uttermost parts, and they just will not get on with this, Hawk. You know this, the frustration that you and Steve and I feel, along with many others, is that we have done all we can to notify. We keep giving you information. We keep putting it right in front of you, and you keep going deeper into denial and saying, I'm not going to deal with this. I will not be a part of this. The United States would never do this. The internment camps, that's a figment of your imagination, Greg. Well, I'll tell you what, that's not what Halliburton thought when they were building them.
Obama signed it.
That's correct. And so the NDAA alone convinced me, not that I need to be convinced, but convinced me and should have convinced many others, and did a few, that this does actually exist because they're advertising for those positions for internment camp, concentration camp guards and managers and people that will be in the infrastructure of these camps. Well, why would they do that? I guess they just do it because they don't have anything else to do. But it's happening, Hawk, all around us. What are we going to do? All we can do is tell people and let them decide for themselves.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's what we can do. But to be honest with you, I thought more people were waking up. Of late, I've seen a return of a lot of people who have pulled the blinders back on their head because the threats and things that they're seeing now before their eyes.
Well, Hawk, look, just this week, I have read emails from people I know. I know who they are. I know where they live, where they come from. They're good people. But because somebody out there struck a match and wanted to take issue with some of the things that Steve and Doug and Joe and I were talking about the other night, as if to say that one person who said, well, I don't think this is entirely right, and it may have come from some other source, and all the different, and these people have their tree shaken instead of standing up and saying, oh, it's not going to alter my planning, it's not going to alter my preparation, it's not going to alter what I do, the way I've got planned to get from A to B when the time comes. Instead, they're going, well, now I'm questioning this. I don't know what to do. I'm just all confused. And I thought, well, if you're confused now, and I mean this in a positive way, if you're confused now, what are you going to be 6 months from now when the lights go out? You're going to be so confused, you won't be able to find your rear end with both hands and a rear end finder. So it comes down to...
that's how they're going to start it, of course. I remember talking to somebody back in the 90s who told me the plans that they had then. And that was in Arkansas and even in a rural area, to where the firefighters and the post office employees and the school janitors even had assignments. They were to go to such and such crossroads in the county road, such and such, by the township road crossroads, and they were to take a firearm and stand guard there and let nobody pass until given further notice, and that kind of thing. And
Hawk,
they said back then, we're going to start it off, we're going to turn off the water, turn off the electricity, turn off the natural gas, turn off the cell phones, turn off the banks, the ATMs, turn it all off, and let it go wild weasel for about a week, and then we'll send in, this is what they'll do. Then they'll send in their Operation Mountain Lion guys you're talking about. They'll jump in, and as you've been Novichoked or gassed from above, and your bodies are laying out, then the boys will jump right in and cordon around you, and they will put you on the trucks or put two in your head. They really won't care too much.
No, they won't. And if you people who are listening tonight, and I say this lovingly to you, it may seem harsh, but I mean it in love. If you can't get it, if you can't stay on course, if you're shaken up because you're thinking you might have to leave your precious job at some point, and yes, jobs are important, and yes, paying the bills are important, but so's taking care of your family and your life. But you can go ahead and plan. You can continue to do what you've been doing. Why would that shake you? Is it just that you don't have the background or the spiritual commitment to keep on with this?
We'll be back in a second, Greg. We'll pause for the cause, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with this exciting show with Greg Evenson.